Hello, a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening to you, however you may be listening and wherever you may be listening. This is the latest edition of the Baldwin Sports Media NFL podcast coming to you in the latest week of the NFL offseason, which has seen some pretty interesting news come out, which of course we will be diving into momentarily. But first, as I always like to do, I like to start the show off by thanking you very much for listening. If you are a new listener, thank you very much for joining us, and don't forget you can like and subscribe on whatever platform you are listening to this to, and don't forget you can also reach out on social media because we are on TikTok, we are on YouTube, and we are on Instagram, and all three of them are at Baldwin Sports Media, and we are also on Twitter, which is MRB Sports Media. And for those of you who are return listeners, again, thank you very much for tuning in and making us a part of your week. Thank you very much for your continued support as we continue to grow this project. I hope everyone has had a good week. I hope everyone has had a safe week because, as I hinted last week, I hinted last week that we were going to be going into a bit of a heat wave, and that certainly did hit. It hit us here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, quite a lot. We've had, I think, 3 different power cuts in the past 3 days, just as systems or whatever have been overloaded, but nothing too disastrous on our end. I hope it has been the same with you, and I hope you've been keeping cool and perhaps most importantly keeping suntan lotion and make sure that you are not burned through the whole thing. But enough about that. Let us talk about football and let us get on with the first topic of the day. And our first topic of this podcast takes us down to Dallas and the Dallas Cowboys. Well, obviously, of course, it'd be the Dallas Cowboys if we're going to Dallas. And some reports coming out concerning head coach Mike McCarthy and his relationship with Jerry Jones. Now, Mike McCarthy, in his time with the Dallas Cowboys, has pretty much done what you would have expected him to do. He's taken them that next step of over Jason Garrett, who, if you were a watcher of First Take back in the days when Skip Bayless was on it with Stephen A. Smith, but also in the aftermath afterwards. But Stephen A. Smith would always blast the Dallas Cowboys for always going 8-8 with Jason Garrett as their head coach. And now Mike McCarthy has sort of got them to a little bit of a better level. They have started to make the playoffs. They haven't quite managed to make a deep run into the playoffs, but they've at least gotten them to that position. However, you would still think that given the talent that they have available and Mike McCarthy, a good head coach, would be able to take them further. But alas, he has yet to do that. Which brings into question whether or not this is going to be his last year with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, this is the final year of his contract, and that does bring another comparison to Jason Garrett, because I remember listening to, it was someone on ESPN during Jason Garrett's last season. I can't remember who it was, but they pointed out how weird it was for a head coach to go into a season on the final year of their contract, because it's either the thing of, you usually let go of a coach a year before their last year of their contract is there, or you give them extension. It's very rare to have a coach actually have to coach through in the same way that a player would. They'll have a prove-it year in the last year of their contract. But that is the situation facing Mike McCarthy this year. And again, if given the talent that is at his disposal, and barring any major disaster like when Dak Prescott got injured in his first year, so didn't have the quarterback play, you can kind of excuse him for that. And also that first year was the COVID year, so he wasn't able to have a proper preseason. It didn't stop Tom Brady, but Tom Brady is what Tom Brady is. Didn't have a proper preseason, all that sort of stuff to get used to. You can excuse him that first year, but everything after that is kind of on Mike McCarthy. And as I've said, he's done a good job, but he's not done a great job, and he's not taken the Dallas Cowboys to the place that you would want and expect the Dallas Cowboys to be in, given their talent level. And it does raise the question about whether or not this is going to be, whether or not Mike McCarthy should survive the season. There have been various reports and various suggestions, and Jerry Jones has had to answer questions in the past about whether or not Mike McCarthy is going to whether or not he's gonna fire him. Though there was all the report that Sean Payton might take over from him. Sean Payton has a very good relationship with Jerry Jones. Was on the staff when Bill Parcells was with the team. I almost forgot who was there. So there's the good relationship there. So it's always been a bit tetchy from Mike McCarthy about whether or not he's going to stick around for the long term. And according to reports coming out this weekend, it looks as if things might be sort of going that little bit south, as it were, for the Dallas Cowboys. Because according to Tyler Dunn from Go Long, he has reportedly said that Mike McCarthy's doing it the best he can, but some of the people I've talked to have said he's getting fed up with it a little bit, and it referring to Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones. Now, Jerry Jones, as we know, always wants to have his fingers in the pie, as it were, when it comes to Dallas Cowboys, because there's always been this idea that none of the success that he has had with the Cowboys has been down to him. You look at the early Super Bowl teams, and everyone believed it was Jimmy Johnson and his great coaching. And even when Jimmy Johnson left, it was Barry Switzer who took over, and everyone thought, he just did it with Jimmy Johnson's team. So until Jerry Jones can win a Super Bowl without all of that, everyone's going to question not so much his legacy, because he's done a great job in continuing the marketing of the Cowboys, building this great stadium for them. So his legacy in that sense is secure, but on the field, we're talking about legacy. And as a result, you do get these sort of weird things where, because Jerry Jones is the owner and the general manager, he can be, again, at least according to various reports and anecdotes that we've heard, he can be just that little bit too involved. And that is why, where you could sort of understand this story having that element of truth to it. That Mike McCarthy is getting fed up of having to deal with Jerry Jones's Jerry Jonesness, shall we say. So it does kind of play into that factor of, yes, Mike McCarthy might do a good job for the Dallas Cowboys this year, and Jerry Jones might come to him and say, yes, you've done well. Say that Mike McCarthy takes the Cowboys to the NFC Championship game, something they haven't done since the 90s. If he makes that, not quite win a Super Bowl, but makes further progress, and Jerry Jones thinks that that's enough to say, right, we're going to offer you that new contract. Is there just a little bit of doubt in your mind that makes you think that Mike McCarthy is just going to turn around and say, no, that's it, I'm done. I can go and get another job elsewhere. We know that head coaches there's always a turnaround in head coaches in the NFL. You look at places that might become available over the course of the next couple of seasons. He might just go on and say, no, I'm gonna try one of them. I'm done with having to deal with Jerry Jones and his control of the franchise. I can't work in these circumstances. So it is going to be one of those interesting stories to keep an eye out over the course of the season. Is even if things go well for the Dallas Cowboys, this might still be the last season that we see Mike McCarthy as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And again, it kind of would work out, I think, possibly for both sides. Because if they do also sign Dak Prescott to that big contract, then Jerry might look at it and think, right, maybe we can bring in a head coach that can get even more out of Dak Prescott and get more out of Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb, for instance. So let's focus on trying to sort that out. So I think one way or another, this is going to be Mike McCarthy's final year with the Dallas Cowboys, barring a Super Bowl win. I think even getting to the Super Bowl, I think won't be enough to save his job from Jerry Jones's side, and from his side, if it's just another season of making the divisional round, say, and losing in the divisional round, then I can see him saying, I need to go another way with this. This is not working out for me. I need to go and try something else. And with this stuff about Jerry Jones, I'm just going to be sick of it. So, as I said, one way or another, I believe this is going to be Mike McCarthy's final year with the Dallas Cowboys, and they're going to get the chance to reset at the end of the year. Who knows whether or not it's going to just be the head coach, or if they're going to be doing the quarterback, restarting the quarterback as well, given the situation with Dak Prescott. So just keep an eye on that as the season progresses. Now that, I suppose, is the end of the serious part of the show, because whilst we do have, as is tradition on the show, 2 more NFL topics and then the weird non-NFL topic that we always like to include here, this isn't so much hard news, as it were, like talking about a specific play. This is more about sort of concept. So this is more about opinions and stuff that has sort of been coming out. So I'm going to first start off with some reports that have been emerging, and this came from Tom Pelissero, who was speaking on the Rich Eisen show, and he was basically saying that there is an idea among NFL owners about whether or not they should basically create a salary cap for quarterbacks. And this is amongst the news that we've seen in recent days. Trevor Lawrence got his big new contract. There's always going to be topics circling around whether or not Dak Prescott or Tua Tagovailoa are going to get theirs, and all these sort of points going around. And Tom Pelissero brought up the point that there is now. I'll read the quote exactly just so you can get the context behind this. So here he was speaking on the Rich Eisen show, and he said, "There certainly has been discussion within the league among certain owners about even the idea of a quarterback cap, that at some point you want quarterback numbers to not go over a certain percentage of your salary cap. To my knowledge, that really hasn't gained traction, in part because so many teams have paid their quarterbacks. And if you went to suddenly an NBA model where all of a sudden you have the max and the super max, and there's really only a couple of levels that guys can get paid at, it kind of changes the dynamics in terms of how you set yourself up salary cap wise and whatnot." And this comes to an idea that I've sort of been having for a couple of years, that I understand the benefits of the salary cap. I do. It encourages teams to not go over and above. Like, the comparison with baseball, for instance, I speak this as someone who has become more and more ingrained and a fan of the Pittsburgh Pirates in the past couple of months. But when you see smaller market teams being unable to compete because of the lack of a hard salary cap that they have in baseball and basketball, because they have the luxury tax, where rich teams can afford to just say, right, we'll pay this much, and then we spend above a certain threshold, we'll just pay it's effectively a fine. But if we spend over this much, we have to then pay that little bit more. And big teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers can get away with that, but small market teams like the Pirates cannot. So the whole salary cap thing, I get the concept behind and not wanting to go over it. But I do think that given the amount of money that is going around the NFL these days, not just in terms of what the players make, but in terms of what the sport itself generates, I think there does need to be a conversation about not necessarily restructuring, but making changes to it. Because I think, as much as I'm not a fan of the MLS and the way that it is run, I do think that they do have one thing that goes in their favour as they helped to grow the brand. They had a thing called designated player, where this was predominantly brought in for the European players like David Beckham when he first came over. Now you'll see it with Lionel Messi and all this stuff that's going on. But the big name European players who are used to being paid very, very high wages come to here and they can't really, they couldn't live in their lifestyle or make the adjustment under a salary cap because of the salary cap that's in the MLS. So the MLS created the designated player, which means that those are players that do not count against the salary cap. So you can pay them whatever money you want and it will not count against the salary cap. And I think that is something that the NFL needs to bring in. Bring in an exemption, if you would, to the quarterback and basically say quarterback salaries do not count. You can even extend this to, I've sort of had this, is when the players come down for the next CBA agreement, is if you have an arrangement where one player on your offense and one player on your defense do not count against the salary cap, just think about how much you would then be able to spend and spread across the rest of the team. Because then we wouldn't have this issue of, if you pay the next big example is Brock Purdy, who's going to be paid like a franchise guy. Pluck a number out the air, 40 million a year. That it probably won't be that, but pluck a number, 40 million. You will then have to lose out on, Deebo Samuel or Trent Williams, say, or one of your big name players for the 49ers, because you've then got to pay Brock Purdy. Now, Dallas Cowboys, you pay Dak Prescott. Are you going to be able to pay Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb at the same time? You just don't know. So you might end up losing one of them. But if you bring in the system where one player on your offense, more than likely the quarterback, but you can finagle it in, if you have a rookie quarterback, you could then make your highest paid wide receiver the number one player, or your number one offensive lineman as the exempt player, as it were. And then you can spread that money around. Is to have one player, again, you can maybe do it similar to a franchise tag where you can only do it for 1 year, that this year only this player will not count against the salary cap. You could do it where, again, it's for the length of the contract. There are ways around it. But one player on offense and one player on defense that does not count against the salary cap. And that way the quarterbacks will still get their money. No one's going to touch the quarterback's money. And a defender, and then you still have that money that was tied up in the salary cap to be able to spread around and pay the rest of the players that are going to need it. So that is a way that when I first saw this news, I thought, yeah, I can see that being a thing where, yes, you can only pay your quarterback no more than X amount of the salary cap, say. I get that. But given the way the sport has gone, why not just take the quarterbacks out of the equation? Just do not count them against the salary cap. That way you can pay them and pay the other players as well. Now, obviously, NFL owners are going to have to sort of agree to this, because that means they're going to have to pay the money going around, because they'd have to pay the again, I'll pluck numbers out of it here, but they have 50 million left in the salary cap. They give 45 million of it to a quarterback, and then rather than having to scrimp and save on paying the outside linebacker 5 million under this new system, they'd be able to pay the outside linebacker, a star outside linebacker, that 45 million that was going to go to the quarterback. So it does mean more spending on the part of the owners, which they've never been able to do, or never been that willing to do. But if it comes with the caveat that, we get to keep our fans and our GM and our coach happy by, meaning that we don't have to get rid of star corner to make way for star quarterback or whatever, I think that's something that with the right negotiations and with the right caveats going the other, maybe that's what gets brought up and is sacrificed in terms of, or the players have to sacrifice in terms of when they get the 18th regular season game. Yes, you can have this 18th regular season game, and we will use the money we generate from that to pay quarterback or pay star lineman more money out of the salary cap, because it's not going to be against the salary cap. Maybe that's the way they go about it. So that's where I think that would be a nice idea for the NFL to implement, is just to get away from the salary cap and the issues, and don't, so that the quarterback isn't necessarily weighing down a franchise in a way. Is they still get paid, but also the rest of the team gets paid, and you don't have to. A lot of people say it, but Max Kellerman's the one that says it the most. You don't have to rob Peter to pay Paul. So again, NFL and NFL owners and NFL players, you can have that idea for free. Is let's bring in the designated player status from the MLS and have players that do not count against the salary cap. That way, you never know. The league might get better and fans will be happier, and owners might be a little bit resentful, but in the long run, they'll be happy as well. And now for the third topic, and something that caught my eye and something I, again, really want to talk about, is the news that came out of the Associated Press this past week when it came to sort of clarifying the situation of the awards that are given out at the end of the season, and specifically it refers to the Comeback Player of the Year award. Now, which last year was won by Joe Flacco. Now, just some sort of background to this. I was always of the belief and understanding that Comeback Player of the Year award went to players who were coming back from injury. Which is why when I was working for a previous company and I was giving predictions for the 2022 season, I believed that the award would go to Christian McCaffrey because he'd suffered a couple of injuries in the previous year and that he would be able to bounce back and do a great job for the Carolina Panthers as he was with at the time. However, that year the award went to Geno Smith, who had a great year with the Seattle Seahawks, taking over from Russell Wilson, but he was given the award basically as a result of he was perceived as not good and came back from a playing style issue, shall we say, rather than injuries. And then this year, of course, there was the big controversy surrounding Damar Hamlin and the fact that he didn't win the award and instead it went to Joe Flacco, who in much a similar situation, although vastly superior circumstances, Damar Hamlin obviously died on the field, like literally was dead on the field, and came back. And whilst he didn't exactly play a key part for the Buffalo Bills, he was still able to play a couple of snaps and get on the field. As opposed to Joe Flacco, who basically came from off the couch to play and do a very good job for the Cleveland Browns. But that sort of sparked the whole thing of what really does the Comeback Player of the Year award mean if we're going to give it to Joe Flacco rather than Damar Hamlin. Again, and I remember saying this a couple of years ago, and this relates to Damar Hamlin, when Alex Smith came back from his injury, and I had a conversation with someone on social media that said as soon as he takes one snap, he's locked up the award. That's what they said. And I sort of didn't agree because I thought, there should be some level of good play to it as well when it came to Alex Smith. And that's why maybe some people were a bit hesitant to give it to Damar Hamlin because of the the lack of impact that he had on the field. If he'd have come back and recorded 5 interceptions and was an all-pro, for instance, then it probably would have been, he would have done it and won it hands down, slam dunk. But because he didn't do it that way and because he wasn't that big of a player for them, then perhaps that caused a doubt in some people's minds. But either way, the AP have come out, the Associated Press that is, have come out and sort of clarified a little bit more what needs to happen for the award going forward, just so that we don't have any repeats of the Joe Flacco situation. So they've come out and said, this is from senior writer Rob Mardy, I hope I've pronounced that right, who oversees the All-Pro and NFL awards voting. He said, now the spirit of the AP Comeback Player of the Year award is to honour a player who has demonstrated resilience in the face of adversity by overcoming illness, physical injury, or other circumstances that led to him missing playing time the previous season. The decision to provide this guidance was made last December, but could not be implemented for the 2023 awards because the season was almost completed. So I just hope that resolves some of the issues moving forward. Because, whilst Damar Hamlin would have, has effectively missed out on his chance to win it this year, although I do quite like the idea that Mike Greenberg brought up, is that it should now, in order to honour Damar Hamlin, it should be called the Damar Hamlin Comeback Player of the Year Award. That way you can get that nice happy medium to say he wasn't completely snubbed from the whole thing, and he gets honoured, and we are going to be constantly reminded of the situation and what he had to go through. So maybe that's a way to go about it. But again, hopefully this sort of guides into what people are going to be looking for, because a lot of people are saying that Sam Darnold could be a favourite to win the Comeback Player of the Year award this year because he's a bit like Geno Smith, was drafted high, started out good, then he sort of stumbled, and now he's been a backup. And if he's with the Vikings and he does well with the Vikings, that he could win it on a based on his playing rather than what he's had to overcome injury wise. So maybe this is just a way to head off those chances and give the award for what, again, I always believed the award was for. It's someone coming back from injury or a major situation like that and give it to them rather than someone who was just, a backup and is now suddenly flourishing somewhere else. So hopefully that gets sorted when the NFL awards and the NFL honors rather come around at the end of next season. And now to the fun non-football story this week, and it is certainly a fun non-football story. I don't know if you guys have been keeping track of what's been going on with the New York Mets in the past 10 days or so, but it is absolutely fantastic. And for those of you who remember the Linsanity days, remember that about 10-15 years ago when Jeremy Lin, the basketball player of the New York Knicks, I should say, and he came onto the scene and they started winning a bunch of games in a row, and it started to transcend sport. Like the fact that even back in the UK we were hearing about it shows you just how big it was that Jeremy Lin was doing this thing. We now have the new Linsanity, and it involves Grimace, the mascot, one of the mascots of McDonald's, and his impact that he has had on the New York Mets baseball team ever since he threw out the first pitch for the Mets in a game. They went on a bit of a run. They won 7 games in a row ever since he threw out the first pitch for them. I laugh at this, sorry, but it is one of the better light-hearted stories that you are going to see. On June 12th, he threw out the first pitch at a game against the Marlins, and they went on a run of 7 games, winning streak in a row. They've now won. I've just got the record in front of me. Let's just double check here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So they've won 9 of their last 11 games ever since he threw out the first pitch. And it's not just the story of that. Teams go on winning streaks, whatever. But the fact that everyone has been able to connect the fact that it started after Grimace threw out the first pitch and the memes that have come off the back of it. Even McDonald's themselves got in on the act by throwing up memes and making him part of their main profile picture on Twitter. Talking about the Mets living in their Grimace era. It's just been absolutely fantastic. And that is what sport should be about. When something fun and lighthearted happens, just embrace it. Don't get all negative and just talk about, is this really a thing, or there's more important. When lighthearted things like this happen, just embrace it. It is absolutely fantastic. Again, how long this whole thing is going to go, I would love to see what happens if the Mets, say, have a miraculous season and go on into the World Series. What this would do for the whole, again, just how the internet is going to react with the memes and everything that goes on around it. It would be absolutely fantastic. But again, if you haven't seen this, go look up, just Google Grimace Mets, and it will tell you the whole story. But it has been absolutely fantastic. And again, what baseball needs right now, and again, what sport needs right now. Because for those of you who are outside of America, tomorrow night is the first of the presidential debates, and that's the start of the time where things can get a little bit divisive and a little bit more angry in America. I wish it weren't the case, but that's just reality. And we need things like this to take our minds off it and just remind us that life can be good at some time. So all hail the Grimace Mets, and good luck to them for the rest of the season. But that is all that we have time for today. I want to thank you very much for listening. As I said at the top of the show, if you are new, thank you very much. And you can like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to, and also on social media. We are at Baldwin Sports Media on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And on Twitter, we are at MRB Sports Media. And for those of you who are regulars, thanks once again, for making us a part of your week. We shall be back next week. And I hope until then you all stay safe and you'll have a good week. Take care, guys.